There is a silent tragedy happening right now, at this very moment. Millions of people are trapped inside their own minds, running through a mental maze, desperately searching for an exit that never actually existed. They wake up in the middle of the night with their hearts racing, not because something happened, but because something might happen. They replay conversations that haven't taken place yet. They fear problems that are still imaginary. They freeze in front of simple decisions, analyzing unlikely scenarios as if they had the power to see the future. And by the end of the day, even without having done anything concrete, they feel exhausted. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Worry does not protect you. It only paralyzes you. Worry is not a shield against failure. It is not insurance against pain. Most of the time, it's an invisible chain that keeps us stuck in the same place while we convince ourselves that we are moving forward. Centuries ago, one of the most lucid thinkers in history understood this deeply. Michel de Montaigne lived in a chaotic era filled with wars, disease, and uncertainty. Yet he refused to live consumed by worry. He believed that fear of the future is a poison that destroys the present. To him, worrying meant suffering twice, once for what actually happens, and once for what may never happen at all. Modern science now confirms what Montaigne sensed intuitively. Excessive worry slowly corrodes the mind. Studies show that constantly replaying problems activates the same brain regions associated with physical pain. Chronic anxiety reduces our ability to solve problems, damages memory, weakens the immune system, and can even shorten life expectancy. Yet despite all this, most people still believe that overthinking is a sign of responsibility. In reality, it is often a destructive habit disguised as discipline. But here lies a strange paradox. The moment we stop worrying, clarity appears. The path begins to reveal itself without force. Humanity's greatest breakthroughs did not come from extreme tension, but from mental clarity. Mozart composed his symphonies with lightness. Einstein said his best ideas came when he was relaxed. The great Stoics believed that a calm mind sees farther than an anxious one. So why do we insist on carrying this weight? What did Montaigne and so many wise thinkers understand that still escapes us today? This is what we are here to uncover. Because before we can free ourselves from worry, we must first understand what is actually happening inside our minds. Perhaps your worry is not really yours. Perhaps it is just mental noise, an old pattern, a learned reaction that can be unlearned. And that process begins here. In 1563, a young Frenchman traveled to Paris searching for answers. He wanted to understand the world, to make sense of life's chaos. But the more he read, the more he studied, the more unsettling a truth became clear to him. Human beings never know as much as they think they do. This realization shaped his entire philosophy. Man walks on thinner ropes than he imagines. Centuries later, neuroscience would confirm what Montaigne already knew. The human brain hates uncertainty. It is a machine designed to seek patterns, predict outcomes, and create order. And when it cannot find certainty, it invents it. We create stories about the future. We trust flawed predictions. We convince ourselves that worrying means preparing. But here's the real problem. Worry does not give us control. It only gives us the illusion of control, and that illusion comes at a very high cost. Every obsessive thought follows the same structure. First, a problem appears, real or imagined. The brain, trying to protect us, activates the amygdala, the region responsible for fear. The nervous system goes into alert mode, the heart beats faster, cortisol floods the body, everything prepares for action. But there is no action to take because the threat is not real. Worry is a false alarm that never shuts off, like an app running endlessly in the background, draining all the system's energy. Montaigne saw this almost humorously. He said that we spend our lives suffering over things that will never happen, and that fear of pain is often worse than pain itself. The Stoic philosopher Seneca expressed the same idea when he wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And modern research supports this. Studies show that around 85% of the things people worry about never actually happen. And here's the most ironic part. In the small percentage of cases where something bad does happen, people usually report that they handled it far better than they expected. In other words, the brain suffers in advance, but when the moment arrives, it realizes that it exaggerated everything. This leads to a fundamental question. If worrying is so useless, why do we keep doing it? Montaigne was a skeptic, and skepticism can be a powerful weapon against anxiety. He questioned absolute certainty, including our inner certainty about what the future holds. When a negative thought appeared, he would ask a simple question: what if I'm wrong? The Stoics took a similar approach, but from a different angle. Instead of fighting uncertainty, they accepted it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should stop debating what it means to be a good person and simply be one. The message is clear. Worry is theoretical, but life is practical. You can spend years predicting disasters that never arrive, or you can live, act, and respond when action is truly needed. A man who plans every detail of his life to avoid chaos fails to see that in trying to avoid mistakes, he commits the greatest mistake of all. He wastes his life. Worry is not only useless, it's destructive. Research in neuroscience shows that excessive rumination overloads the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making. The result is paralysis. The more we think, the less we act. The more we plan, the less we live. Montaigne recognized this through observation. He withdrew from public life and spent years studying human behavior. He noticed how people tortured themselves over unreal problems and concluded that a better life does not come from eliminating uncertainty, but from accepting it. Shakespeare captured this perfectly when he wrote that nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Worry is an attempt to control what cannot be controlled. The world will always remain unpredictable. Accepting that is not surrender, it's freedom. Something deeply unfair happens to those who try too hard. The student who studies obsessively often performs worse on the exam. The speaker who desperately wants to sound intelligent suddenly stutters in front of the audience. The athlete who fears defeat too intensely makes mistakes right at the beginning. There is a cruel logic at work here. The more we try to control an outcome, the further we move away from it. Montaigne saw this obsession with success as a mental prison. He believed that life moves like a current, and trying to trap it inside rigid expectations only leads to frustration. A man who struggles too hard to hold on to the river ends up drowning in it. Modern science agrees with him. There is a point where effort stops being helpful and starts becoming an obstacle. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the creator of the concept of flow, studied athletes, artists, and scientists and discovered something striking. Their best performances happened not when they were tense and over-focused, but when they were relaxed and fully absorbed. Their minds entered a state of calm attention and actions flowed without resistance. Most people live in the opposite state. They believe that worry equals preparation, that anxiety proves commitment, and so they suffocate themselves with effort. This is the great paradox of worry. The more you care, the more you freeze. The more you relax, the more accurate you become. Greek mythology gives us a powerful image of this. Icarus had wings made of wax and feathers. His father, Daedalus, warned him not to fly too low or too high. But intoxicated by the feeling of control, Icarus flew too close to the sun. The wax melted and he fell into the sea. The story is usually told as a warning against arrogance, but there is a detail few notice. If Icarus had been paralyzed by fear and overthinking, he would have fallen as well. Fear of failure often creates failure. This happens because the brain, when trying to avoid a mistake, ends up focusing on it. Psychologists call this cognitive irony. The more you try not to think about something, the stronger it returns. Try not to think about a white bear. You already are. Montaigne understood this instinctively. He said that the worried man is trapped between two extremes. If he does not try hard enough, he feels guilty. If he tries too hard, he burns out. The solution is to stop treating life like an exam and start treating it like a process. There's a famous study from the University of Chicago that illustrates this perfectly. Basketball players were divided into two groups. One group was told to simply shoot freely. The other was told that every missed shot would cost them points. The result was clear. The second group performed significantly worse. Why? Because when we try to consciously control every movement, the prefrontal cortex becomes overloaded. We lose what psychologists call efficient automaticity, the state where body and mind work together naturally. Montaigne already knew this. For him, living well meant trusting instinct without trying to dominate every detail. He once wrote that often we get lost by trying too hard to find ourselves. This leads to a crucial question. How do we let go without becoming careless? How do we care less without becoming irresponsible? Most people make a fundamental mistake here. They confuse care with worry. Caring means acting in the present, doing what needs to be done without emotional excess. Worrying means suffering in advance, wasting energy trying to predict what cannot be predicted. The difference lies in intention. One flows, the other paralyzes. Montaigne believed that much of wisdom came from learning this distinction. He saw excessive worry as a form of arrogance, the human desire to control what was never meant to be controlled. His solution was balance, involvement without attachment. And this idea brings us to something even deeper: acceptance. For Montaigne, for the Stoics, and even for Eastern philosophies, acceptance was never resignation, it was strategy. Because true freedom does not come from controlling everything, it comes from knowing what to release. There is a recurring scene in ancient and modern tragedies. The protagonist fights against fate, against others, against reality itself. Years are wasted trying to change the unchangeable. Finally, exhausted, defeated, he collapses and accepts what he can no longer fight. And something strange happens. The weight disappears. In acceptance, he finds unexpected relief. Montaigne saw this clearly. The wise man, in his view, is not the one who conquers the world, but the one who stops fighting it. Acceptance is not giving up, it is understanding that some things must be released so others can grow. The one who clings to what is already slipping away condemns himself to endless suffering. Science supports this idea. Studies show that mentally resisting a negative emotion only strengthens it. The more we try to push away an unwanted thought, the more persistent it becomes. The brain interprets resistance as danger, and anything labeled dangerous receives more attention. What Montaigne, the Stoics, and Buddhist monks all understood is something radical. Letting go is not losing, it is creating space to live. There's a Zen story that captures this perfectly. A man falls into the ocean during a storm. He fights the waves desperately, thrashing to keep his head above water. The current is stronger. He swallows water. His strength fades. Then, in a moment of surrender, he stops struggling. His body relaxes, and instead of sinking, he floats. Life works the same way. The more we resist what we cannot change, the more we suffer. The more we accept, the more room we find to breathe. Montaigne lived during wars, plagues, and political instability, yet he wasn't consumed by paranoia. He understood that some tragedies are unavoidable, but the extra suffering we create in our minds is optional. The same idea appears in Stoic philosophy. Epictetus said that life contains two kinds of things, those we can control and those we cannot. Human misery comes from investing energy in the second category. Here is the trick. The more we accept what we cannot change, the more energy we have to change what we can. This may sound counterintuitive because we are taught from childhood to never give up, to fight until the end. But there is a difference between intelligent effort and blind resistance. Carl Jung once said that what you resist persists. Neuroscience explains why. Suppressing a thought activates the very neural circuits associated with it. This is why suppression of emotions never works. Those who try not to feel anger become more irritable. Those who try not to worry sink deeper into anxiety. Montaigne knew this long before brain scans existed. He wrote that the best way to deal with fear is not to run from it, but to look at it directly. When we grow accustomed to facing what terrifies us, we lose the habit of fearing it. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate, not just accepting what happens, but embracing it without resistance. And here is the surprising part. When we stop resisting, things naturally change. Anger softens, anxiety weakens, pain finds space to heal. Many people misunderstand acceptance and confuse it with passivity. But accepting reality does not mean doing nothing. It means acting with clarity instead of emotional chaos. A Stoic general who loses a battle doesn't cry over the map. He accepts what happened and reorganizes his troops. A business owner facing failure doesn't waste energy wishing the past were different. He adapts and moves forward. Montaigne believed life should be lived with lightness, not weight. And that realization leads us to the next step: how to turn acceptance into strength and uncertainty into an ally rather than an enemy. Two people fall from a cliff. The first one flails in the air, arms grasping at nothing, fighting desperately as if resistance could cancel gravity. His body is rigid, panicked, locked in fear. The second one does something completely different. He lets go. His body loosens. He yields to the fall. And when he hits the ground, he rolls instead of crashing. One is shattered. The other survives. The difference was not luck, it was detachment. Montaigne understood this principle deeply. He believed that life carries us like a river, and that trying to grip the riverbanks is an illusion. We suffer because we believe we own what was never ours to control. The paradox is striking. The more we try to control life, the more we suffer. The more we let go, the freer we become. Buddhism teaches that all suffering is born from attachment, but not only attachment to material things. We attach ourselves to expectations, identities, certainties, people, and even our own thoughts. The problem is that all of these are temporary. Life is not static. Nothing remains fixed. Montaigne said that the only true certainty is change. Rigidity leads to breaking. Flexibility leads to survival. Neuroscience confirms this. Studies show that emotional resistance, the act of fighting against unpleasant realities, activates the same brain regions associated with physical pain. The more a person clings to what is already past, the deeper the suffering. But there is something even more surprising. Detachment does not only reduce pain, it creates space for creativity, intuition, and growth. In Taoism, there is a concept called Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action. It means that things flow best when we stop forcing them. An artist who relaxes while painting creates more freely than one obsessed with every stroke. A musician who surrenders to the sound plays better than one rigidly analyzing each note. Nature offers an even clearer lesson. The tree that bends with the wind survives the storm. The tree that resists breaks. Montaigne lived by this principle. He did not try to fit into a rigid image of a wise man or a serious philosopher. He laughed at his own ignorance. He wrote without clinging to absolute truth. He allowed thought to move freely, and the result was remarkable. His essays, written with a sense of openness and spontaneity, influenced generations of thinkers, from Pascal to Nietzsche. This raises an essential question. How do we apply this in modern life? Most people live trapped inside a fixed story about who they are. They say, "This is just how I am. I cannot change. I must have this person, this job, this outcome, or I will never be happy. If this does not happen exactly as planned, my life is ruined." Montaigne saw these certainties as illusions. For him, wisdom came from the ability to ask a simple question. What if? What if things do not need to be exactly as I imagined? What if I can live well without what I thought I needed? What if by letting go, I find something better? These questions soften the mind. They dissolve rigidity. They reveal that control was never real, only comforting. Nietzsche expanded this idea with the concept of amor fati, love of fate, not just accepting circumstances, but embracing them as if everything were unfolding exactly as it should. Montaigne often observed people tormented by fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of death. And he noticed something strange. The moment they stopped fighting these fears, something shifted. The fear weakened. The mind found a new path. Life organizes itself better when we stop over-organizing it. This does not mean living irresponsibly. It means acting in the present without being enslaved by the future. Somewhere right now, someone is frozen in front of a simple decision. They analyze, reanalyze, weigh possibilities, and construct endless scenarios inside their mind. Time passes, the weight grows heavier, and the only real outcome is hesitation turning into habit. Montaigne saw this as a poison. Our lives, he believed, are made more of hesitation than action. And he understood something few people realize. Endless thinking is not intelligence, it is fear disguised as caution. Worrying less does not mean acting recklessly. It means acting without being chained to the fear of being wrong. It means freeing yourself from perfectionism, anxiety, and the illusion that you must be fully prepared before you begin. Most people reverse this logic. They believe they must feel confident before they act, but the truth is the opposite. Action comes before confidence. Movement creates security, not the other way around. Fear of action behaves like a shadow. The more you run from it, the larger it becomes. Research shows that when we delay something due to anxiety, the brain does not relax, it amplifies the threat. The prefrontal cortex keeps ruminating, turning small challenges into mental monsters. Montaigne already knew this centuries ago. For him, the only cure for fear was contact. What haunts us in imagination rarely disturbs us in reality. Often the greatest mistake is not acting and failing, but never acting at all and living haunted by what if. Montaigne developed a simple yet revolutionary approach for his time. He believed thinking should be flexible, free, and unchained from the obsession with being right. His method rested on three principles. First, accept ignorance as strength. He believed our greatest wisdom is recognizing how little we know. This removes the pressure to have all the answers before acting. Mistakes stop being failures and become lessons. Second, replace certainty with direct experience. Instead of living trapped in theory, test things in reality, learn by doing. For Montaigne, true knowledge came from living, not from endless analysis. Third, treat life as an experiment, not as a final judgment. This lightens self-criticism and restores freedom to try. Everything can be adjusted and corrected, except time wasted in hesitation. These ideas made Montaigne different from many philosophers of his era. While others searched for absolute truths, he focused on everyday life, mental flexibility, and lightness of thought. Nietzsche, who drew deeply from Montaigne, expanded this into the idea of the free spirit. A truly free person, he said, is not obsessed with others' judgments, not trapped by rigid beliefs, and not paralyzed by uncertainty. The Stoics echoed this with a simple rule: do what is within your control and release the rest. Modern science confirms this logic. Studies show that taking action significantly reduces anxiety. The moment you take even a small step, the brain releases dopamine, creating momentum. Beginning dissolves resistance. Montaigne spent his life studying human nature and reached a clear conclusion. Happiness does not come from eliminating worry. It comes from learning how to live well despite it. The truly wise person is not fearless, not perfect, not in total control. True wisdom is lightness in the face of chaos. In the end, everything comes down to one simple principle: less worry, more life. In the end, everything comes back to a simple truth that Montaigne understood better than most. Life is not meant to be solved, it is meant to be lived. The mind wants certainty, guarantees, and perfect plans, but reality offers none of that. And the more we demand certainty from an uncertain world, the more anxious and rigid we become. Montaigne believed that the greatest mistake we make is turning life into a courtroom where every decision feels like a final verdict on who we are. He refused this mindset. For him, life was closer to a workshop than a trial. You test, you adjust, you fail, you learn, and you move forward. Nothing is final except the time you lose by standing still. One of the most paralyzing illusions humans carry is the belief that they must be 100% ready before they act. We wait for confidence, clarity, motivation, or certainty, but these things rarely come first. They are not prerequisites for action, they are consequences of it. Action creates clarity, movement creates confidence. Montaigne saw hesitation as more dangerous than error. A mistake can teach you something. Hesitation teaches you nothing except fear. Modern psychology supports this completely. Studies show that anxiety decreases not when we think more, but when we act more. Even small actions send a signal to the brain that the situation is manageable. The nervous system calms down, the mental fog begins to lift. This is why procrastination feels so heavy. The brain never rests while a task is avoided. It keeps the threat alive. But the moment you start, even imperfectly, the pressure begins to dissolve. Montaigne understood that worry is often fear dressed as responsibility. We tell ourselves we are being careful, but in reality we are avoiding the discomfort of uncertainty. He believed courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act while fear is present. This idea appears again and again in Stoic philosophy. Do what is necessary and let go of what you cannot control. The rest is noise. Montaigne also understood something deeply human. We are not fixed beings, we are constantly changing. Yet many people imprison themselves inside rigid identities. They say, this is who I am and this is how my life must be. Montaigne rejected this. He believed identity was fluid. Today you are one version of yourself, tomorrow you may be another. And that flexibility is not weakness, it is survival. When we cling too tightly to a single image of success, happiness, or meaning, we suffer every time reality deviates from the plan. Letting go of rigid expectations allows life to surprise us, often in good ways we never predicted. This is why Montaigne valued lightness so much. He believed wisdom should make life easier, not heavier. A person who cannot laugh at himself, he said, is already imprisoned by his own seriousness. Modern neuroscience offers a similar message. The brain performs best when it feels safe, not when it feels under constant threat. Chronic worry keeps the nervous system locked in survival mode. Creativity, intuition, and problem-solving all decline. But when the mind relaxes, when it stops scanning endlessly for danger, new solutions emerge naturally. This is not laziness, it is biological intelligence. Throughout history, those who created, discovered, and built the most were rarely the most anxious. They were curious, engaged, and present. They focused on what they could do now, not on every possible outcome later. Montaigne believed presence was the antidote to worry. When you fully inhabit the present moment, the future loses much of its power over you. Worry pulls you out of life. Presence brings you back. And presence is something you practice, not something you wait for. It begins with small choices, choosing to act instead of overthink, choosing to respond instead of ruminate, choosing to accept uncertainty instead of fighting it. None of this means you will never worry again. Worry is part of being human. The difference is that it no longer controls you. You notice it, you question it, and then you move anyway. Montaigne did not promise a life without fear, pain, or uncertainty. He offered something far more realistic and far more valuable, a way to live well despite them. He taught that freedom does not come from controlling life, but from releasing the need to control it. When you stop demanding guarantees, life becomes lighter. When you stop obsessing over outcomes, action becomes easier. When you stop treating every decision as irreversible, movement returns. Somewhere, right now, someone listening to this feels stuck, paralyzed by a choice, overwhelmed by possibilities, afraid of making the wrong move. Montaigne would offer simple advice: move. Not perfectly, not confidently, just move. You will learn more from one imperfect step than a lifetime of hesitation. Confidence will come later, clarity will follow action, and the future will meet you when it arrives. Until then, live where life actually happens, here, now, this moment. If this message resonated with you, if you felt the weight of worry loosen even slightly, then it has already done its job. Creating content like this takes time, research, and care. If you want to support this work directly, one way is by becoming a subscriber of the channel, which helps keep these ideas alive. If you prefer a one-time gesture, you can use super thanks as a way to show appreciation for the value this brought you. And if financial support is not an option, that is perfectly fine. Watching, commenting, and sharing already makes a meaningful difference. Because in the end, what truly matters is this exchange of ideas, this shared pursuit of a calmer, freer, more present mind. Thank you for being here. And remember, less worry, more life.